For a high school junior we'll call Maria, life had a predictable rhythm. The morning bell, the chaos of backpacks in the hall, the familiar drone of a teacher's lecture. It was a world she knew. Her high school, a big campus in a quiet town, was her universe. It was where she aced chemistry, laughed with her friends at lunch, and stressed about college applications. It was normal. It was safe. Until a Tuesday morning, when a sound that didn't belong broke that rhythm. It didn't start with a bang. It started with a frantic, garbled voice over the intercom. The words were a mess, but the panic in the tone was crystal clear. Then, a message popped up on her teacher's phone, chillingly clear. Active shooter reported on campus. Initiate a code red lockdown. This is not a drill. In a split second, the normal world of high school just vanished. The classroom, a place for learning, suddenly felt like a trap. Her teacher, with a pale face and shaking hands, did what she was trained to do. The lights went off. The door was locked and barricaded with a heavy filing cabinet. Maria and her 20 or so classmates were rushed into a corner, away from the door and the windows that now felt like huge, exposed targets. They huddled together in the dark, a mess of tangled limbs and shallow, terrified breaths. The silence that came next was the worst part. It was heavy and suffocating, broken only by the frantic pounding of her own heart and the sound of a girl next to her silently crying. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sent a new jolt of terror through the room. Whispers started spreading, illuminated by the ghostly blue light of phone screens. Someone said they heard a shot near the gym. My friend in the other building isn't answering. Is this really happening? Maria grabbed her own phone, her fingers fumbling as she texted her mom. I love you. We're on lockdown. I'm scared. The reply was instant. I love you too. Stay hidden. Police are on their way. Be quiet and be safe. The finality in those words, the unspoken horror they both felt, made it all feel terrifyingly real. Since the Columbine High School massacre in 1999, more than 390,000 students in the U.S. have been exposed to gun violence at school, a statistic that always felt abstract until now. Now Maria was part of that number. Minutes felt like an eternity. An hour went by, then another. They stayed crammed in the dark, muscles aching, minds racing. At one point, heavy footsteps pounded down the hall, followed by loud shouts. Police! Clearing the hall! The sound was both a relief and a whole new kind of fear. Were they there to save them, or was the threat right outside their door? That barricade suddenly felt like a joke. Every student in that room was thinking about their own mortality, a weight no teenager should ever have to carry. Finally, after almost 3 hours of suffocating tension, a key turned in the lock. A police officer in full tactical gear, rifle in hand, carefully opened the door. All clear, he said, his voice firm but tired. The relief was so huge, it was physically painful. Students started sobbing, not out of fear anymore, but from the sheer exhaustion of being terrified for so long. They were led out of the classroom, hands in the air, past a surreal scene of armed officers and abandoned backpacks. The lockdown had been triggered by a student who brought a stolen, unloaded gun to school. He was caught, and no shots were ever fired. But the lack of actual violence didn't erase the psychological damage. For Maria, the school wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It had become a haunted house, where every hallway echoed with her fear. In the days that followed, Maria couldn't function. She couldn't sleep without waking up in a cold sweat. The memory of the lockdown stuck on a loop in her head. A locker slamming shut would make her jump. The crowded cafeteria felt claustrophobic, like the walls were closing in, Her grades dropped. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, joining an untold number of students who suffer from increased anxiety, depression, and stress after these events. Her parents saw the change. The bright, bubbly student was gone. In her place was a girl who was jumpy, withdrawn, and constantly exhausted. School, she told them, felt like a cage. She couldn't listen to her teachers because she was too busy mapping out escape routes. She couldn't trust that the promise of safety wasn't a lie that could be shattered at any moment. The trauma had stolen her ability to learn. After weeks of panic attacks and sleepless nights, Maria and her parents made a heartbreaking choice. She would not go back to her high school. The risk to her mental health was just too high. They enrolled her in an online program so she could finish her education from the safety of her bedroom. She quit her school, not because she wasn't smart or ambitious, but because the very place that was supposed to educate her had become the source of her trauma. Her story is a stark reminder that the wounds from a lockdown aren't always visible. For Maria, the horror wasn't just the 3 hours in the dark. It was the indefinite sentence of fear that came after, forcing her to abandon a part of her life just to feel safe again. But you don't need a real weapon to destroy a student's world. Sometimes, the deepest trauma comes not from an actual threat, but from a drill designed to prepare for one. A drill so realistic, so cruel, that it becomes an act of psychological warfare against the very students it's supposed to protect. On a Thursday morning in December of 2018, it was business as usual at Lake Brantley High School in Altamont Springs, Florida. For a junior we'll call Alex, it was just another day of classes. Then, an administrator's voice came over the intercom, flat and urgent. "This is not a drill." He announced an active shooter was on campus. At the same time, teachers got a text alert. Active shooter reported at Brantley Building 1, or Building 2, and other buildings. Initiate a code red lockdown. Chaos erupted. Teachers, their faces just as terrified as their students, slammed doors, cut the lights, and shoved kids into closets and corners. In Alex's classroom, the fear was so thick you could taste it. Students, believing they were about to die, started texting their parents goodbye. One student had an asthma attack. Another threw up from fear. From his hiding spot in a cramped supply closet, Alex could hear sobs and whispered prayers. He texted his dad, "I love you." Active shooter at school. The world shrank to the size of that dark closet, to the smell of dust and fear. For 24 agonizing minutes, the entire school thought they were in the middle of a massacre. They were trapped in a state of pure terror, all orchestrated by the adults meant to keep them safe. Then, a shaky voice came over the intercom, announcing the Code Red drill was over. But in loud places like the cafeteria, the announcement was hard to hear. Many students only heard the words Code Red again, kicking off a second wave of panic. I saw hundreds of people start running and screaming, and people were getting stampeded, trying to get out, one junior told reporters. Thinking a shooter was still loose, students fled for their lives. They jumped fences and ran into a nearby neighborhood, thinking they were escaping certain death. When the truth finally settled in that it was all a drill, an unannounced simulation of their worst nightmare, the terror didn't just disappear. It twisted into something else, a deep, profound sense of betrayal. I can still hear the voice of my teacher saying, "Oh my God, there's a shooter in Building 1, one student recalled. That's burned in my brain now, even though it's not real." Parents were furious. As one mother wrote, "Nothing is more terrifying than getting a text from your daughter who is hiding in her classroom having a complete anxiety attack." The school had deliberately traumatized its own students in the name of preparedness. For Alex, that drill was the breaking point. It wasn't just scary, it was a total violation of trust. How could he feel safe when the people in charge would willingly make him think he was about to be killed? And this wasn't a one-off event. Across the country, schools have used tactics like firing blank rounds or using fake blood during drills, all in the name of practice. While about 95% of American public schools conduct lockdown drills, there is almost no solid research proving that these super-realistic drills are actually effective at saving lives. What is known, however, is the harm they cause. Studies, like one from 2021, show these drills are linked to huge increases in student anxiety, a 42% increase, and depression, a 39% increase. For the 90 days following a drill, students' concerns about death can jump by as much as 22%. Alex felt this firsthand. The weeks after the drill were filled with a constant humming anxiety. He looked at his teachers and administrators differently, not as protectors, but as people who had lied to him. He couldn't shake the feeling of being a pawn in some twisted experiment. Experts warn that for many kids, it's hard to tell the difference between a drill and a real event, leading to genuine, lasting trauma. The school district defended the unannounced drills, saying they were necessary. But for Alex, the price of that preparedness was too high. The drill didn't make him feel safer. It just downloaded the terror of a school shooting directly into his brain, without the threat ever being real. It showed him that his well-being was less important than the school's security theater. Feeling betrayed and unable to feel safe within those walls anymore, Alex decided to leave. He finished high school using a mix of virtual school and a different, smaller private school. He quit, not because of a real gunman, but because of a fake one. The horror was manufactured, but the trauma was devastatingly real, forcing him to flee his own education just to find some peace. The stories of Maria and Alex are two sides of the same terrifying coin. One was haunted by the ghost of a potential threat. The other was traumatized by a drill that felt just as real. Both were forced to make a choice no student should ever have to make: give up their school for their own sanity. Their experiences shine a light on a chilling part of modern American education, that the climate of fear, whether from real threats or the drills that copy them, is leaving deep and lasting wounds. These lockdowns are creating a generation of students who have to face their own mortality in the same hallways where they should be dreaming about their future. Experts are increasingly questioning if the unproven benefits of hyper-realistic drills could possibly be worth the proven psychological damage they cause. The trauma is real, the anxiety is real, and for more and more students, the only way out is to walk away. The school bell no longer just signals the start of class. For too many, it's a trigger for a terror that follows them long after they've left the classroom. If these stories resonated with you, please hit that like button. The fear and trauma around school safety is a heavy weight, and it's one that millions of students carry every day. Share your own thoughts in the comments. Have you, or someone you know, been through something similar? Where are you watching from in the world? And if you want to hear more true stories that uncover the difficult realities of our world, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.